Welcome to the Holding Hope podcast. My name is Pam Orr, and I am the Executive Director for Fellowship Housing, a nonprofit that empowers single moms. The Holding Hope podcast is a space for courageous single moms to share their journeys. Through their stories, we will explore the life-changing power of hope. Each of these women inspires me, and I know they will inspire you as well. I'm so glad you've decided to listen. Well, welcome to the Holding Hope podcast. My name is Pam Orr, and I'll be your host today. I'm the Executive Director for Fellowship Housing, an organization that serves single moms in the Chicagoland area. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I believe single moms are some of the hardest working individuals I know. I'm so excited for you to meet today's guest, Ali. She is a mom to 4 kids, 2 boys, Juan and Andre, and 2 girls, Janessa and Camila. I'm so excited for her to share your story. Welcome to the podcast, Ali.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you for inviting me.
It's good. We're going to have a fun time today. Ali, I pulled out your graduation speech. So you were with us at Fellowship Housing for about 18 months, if I remember correctly. And I pulled out the speech that you gave at graduation. I'm just going to pull out a couple of those things and ask you about those today so that people can hear your story and get to know you a little bit. You described your life before Fellowship Housing as a mess. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What were the hardest moments? Can you take us back to that pre-Fellowship Housing time and help us to understand what life was like for you then?
Yes, definitely. Being a single mom of 2 young boys and being what I considered myself at that time, a teenager, even though I was 16, 17, I was not mature enough to be a mom, but I did have to learn and get up and grow and survive. I am thankful that my parents were there to guide me and to help me, but at the same time, they were just not the greatest mentors for my children and myself, which of course led me to jump from home to home to home with my 2 young ones, my 2 boys. And it was a mess. It was a mess because I lived in so many houses, so many people's basements. I can't even count 3, 4 different basements that I moved into, including my parents. So
and how old were your boys at the time?
At that time, they were around 7, 8, 7 and 8.
Okay. So you're traveling around from basement to basement, finding a place to just lay your head that's safe at night, I assume. What brought you to Fellowship Housing? Can you take me back to what led you to Fellowship Housing, and when you found it, what you thought?
Yes. Well, what led me to Fellowship Housing was just the eagerness of independence, being done living in my parents' basement, being done living off of my parents. I just wanted independence. I knew there was somewhere out there in the internet that I could find some help for single moms. And I sure did. I found you guys in the internet. I read stories in your Fellowship Housing webpage that I was very, what's the word? I couldn't believe. It was too good to be true. But yet I still had the instinct that I need to apply, I need to try, and maybe they'll call me. That's what I said. So that is what led me here.
So you applied, and what was that process of applying to be a part of the Fellowship Housing family? What was that process like for you?
The process was exciting, but at the same time, nerve-wracking. Everything that I read in the webpage was a dream come true. So in order to go through the process, it was nerve-wracking. I wanted what other moms have gotten, that stability, that independence that I could gain. Not only that, but just help, more additional help. So it was nerve-wracking. It did take a little bit of time and patience.
Okay. All right. So what was it like? Take me to that moment when you were told, yes, we would like to have you join fellowship housing. Do you remember that moment when you heard that answer?
Yes, I do remember very clearly. And I know I cried. I know I cried. I remember the persons that were there too, telling me that I had been approved and that I had been approved to move to Elgin, which was an area that I very familiarly knew.
Okay.
So I was very happy and overwhelmed with joy.
What did that mean to you? What was going through your mind? What was the difference that you were hoping to see after being accepted and joining fellowship housing?
The difference I was hoping to see was being able to maintain an apartment on my own, being able to have extra money for my children for food and bills. But never was I thinking that fellowship would also help me with my bills and my credit score and just paying half of the bills. That was not nowhere near my mind. I honestly just wanted stability in a home where it was just me and my children.
Can I take us back just a second? Did you have a partner at all that was helpful to you early on when the boys were born?
No, I did not. Their father did leave when my youngest boy was 4 years old.
I'm sorry, that must have been hard.
Yes, I mean, even when he was around, he was never financially helped.
Okay, so you were on your own. How old were you at this time?
When I had my oldest, I was 17.
Okay, so
almost 18.
You were very young.
Yes.
Wow. All right, so you've been accepted into fellowship housing. And one of the things that you said, again, in your speech was that budgeting was something that was kind of foreign to you at this point. Talk to me about learning that budgeting process at fellowship housing. What was that like?
Well, that was a process. It definitely was a process because no one ever taught me about budgeting. Before fellowship housing, my money was bills, food, and rent with my parents. There was no budgeting. I had little tiny left and nothing to budget. So entering into fellowship housing world and budgeting, I did learn a lot. It was kind of rough because I kept seeing that I had extra money. And of course, wanted to give my children more things that I had not been able to before. But instead, I had to save it. That was the rule, and no touching it. So, I mean, it was a process, but it was amazing to learn how to save and manage my money.
What were some of the tools that you picked up while you were in fellowship housing that equipped you to be where you are today, really?
Some of the tools, like budgeting, definitely being able to, I remember the one tool that I still do is the snowball effect.
Okay, right. You want to explain what that is if somebody listening doesn't know?
The snowball effect is pretty much putting down all of your debt that you currently owe, credit cards, any debt that you shouldn't have, but you do have. And being able to pay the smallest amount first. Up until you have that paid, you go to the next one, pay that other little bigger one, and then the most bigger one, and until you end up paying all of your debt.
How do you remember how much debt you entered with and how much you left fellowship housing with?
I do not.
So I looked it up, and you reduced your debt by $15,000 during those 2 years. That's pretty incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes.
And you increased your savings by $7,000. and your credit score increased over 200 points.
That was amazing work that fellowship helped me with.
I was going to say fellowship. I was waiting to see how you were going to answer that. That fellowship helped you is exactly it. You did the hard work. Yeah. When you stood there at graduation, how did the picture of yourself change from that first day when you came into fellowship housing, from that day you stood on the stage and gave your graduation speech? How did your vision of yourself change?
It definitely changed a whole lot. I definitely felt a lot more empowered and more being able to speak up, being able to say no, being able to be more conservative with my money, my time, with anybody else other than my little family. So I did feel very, very empowered when I left.
And that's different than the way you felt walking in the doors.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Great. Faith played an important role in your story, if I remember correctly. Can you talk about what role faith played in your life then, and what role faith plays in your life now?
Back then, well, I've always been a big, strong believer of our Lord. And although sometimes we don't have the patience, I remember that I always believed in him, and I knew he had something more for me. And I was just living day by day with my faith. But as I entered the program in fellowship housing, I know my faith grew a lot more because I've been a bigger person in so many ways after entering fellowship housing. And right now, with what I have right now, I feel very empowered and very faithful to God.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. How do you think the boys, or actually, and Janessa came along, right, during your time? How did the time that you spent with fellowship housing, how did that impact your children?
It impacted them really big in the bestest way. Having their own space, having their own independence, being us four, but without the pressure of my parents. Because parents are great, they're wonderful, but there's also times where we bump heads.
Sure.
And then me not being around my children before because I worked so much. And now that I entered fellowship housing, I had more time for them. It helped them. It helped them throughout the way. I feel like I did something right at this point right now. Through all my struggles, I still feel like I must have done something right.
Tell me about your boys now. What are they doing now, and how old are they now? Yes,
Andres is 22. He is now living with his girlfriend in my basement, but he has his own little side business of vintage clothing. He goes to events to sell. He sells online, and he's doing pretty good.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And what about Juan?
Juan graduated from high school not too long ago. I think it was last year. And then he entered a recording and film, audio and video. No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Recording Film Connection is the name of the school.
Okay.
But he is an audio engineer.
Okay.
He also makes his own beats, his own music, and puts them on for sale in some website that he told me. So yes, he's working his little way up there to be known.
Wonderful. To be known. I like that. That's wonderful. Okay. So what did housing look like post fellowship housing, and what was next for you? You graduated in 2019. Is that right? June of 2019?
I think so. I can't remember the year.
I think that's about it. That's, almost 5 years ago now. Tell me a little, it is 5 years ago now. Tell me a little bit about what life has been like for you after fellowship housing. I believe you purchased a home after fellowship housing, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I did purchase a home in a different state, in the state of Michigan. We lived probably almost a year over there.
Okay.
And then we just couldn't settle. We couldn't settle down because we were missing so much of Illinois. We pretty much have a life here now. Mm-hmm. So we then decided to move back over here.
Okay.
And we were renting. We were renting in Elgin, in the same apartment complex where I was with fellowship.
Oh, wonderful.
So that connection was still there. Mm-hmm. I still kind of felt part of fellowship, even though I was on my own, until we finally moved into our brand new home that I just bought in March.
All right. I just have to stop because I think it's quite incredible what you have accomplished. I mean, we talked about what you accomplished during the 2 years financially with your credit score and savings and paying off debt. And then you purchased a home. And then you decided it was time to come back home to Illinois and rented for a while and then purchased another home. I mean, that's really incredible. Would it be fair to say that you've held on to some of those tools that you received from fellowship housing, because it seems like you're doing really well right now?
Yes, definitely. I am still using my budgeting skills. Mm-hmm. I'm using my knowledge about saving, deciding, making better choices, better decisions, and investing.
Investing too.
Like homes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's great. All right. What advice would you give to oftentimes I think single moms are listening. They might be in a place of struggling, similar to you when you said your life was not where you wanted it to be. What advice would you give to someone listening who may be struggling right now?
The strongest advice I would give is that there is hope. There is always hope. Sometimes we just need to look a little more. We need to dig a little more, but there is programs that are amazing, such as fellowship housing. God never leaves you. He's always there, but he's always has a good timing for you. So never give up.
That's great. So looking ahead, what dreams do you still have for your 4 children and for yourself as you look into the future?
Dreaming ahead, I definitely would love my Juan to be known, to be on his own, even though he wants to leave the country once he becomes famous. But I would love their independence and their stability on their own without needing from anyone. I do want to purchase a bigger home where we can all fit, including my parents. Retiring my parents and having them live from me is one of my biggest dreams that I plan to accomplish.
I love that. I just feel led to ask you, before the podcast started, we were talking about where you currently work. And I think the work that you're doing is so important. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what you're currently doing right now and who you're working for?
Yes, of course. I work for a nonprofit organization that's called the World Relief. World Relief is currently helping asylees, refugees, immigrants, anybody, pretty much everybody and anybody. There is so much things that we provide. We provide clothing, we provide furniture, we provide English classes that are free. We resettle refugees here as well as asylees who have just been granted asylum. And the specific department that I work for is the Immigration Legal Services, where I get to do a lot of the adjustment of status from asylees to green card holders or refugees to green card holders. my biggest population is the DACA renewals for my DACA people. I consider that program my baby because I'm always scheduling them wherever I don't even have time. But I love helping out in that way.
It must be so very rewarding to be able to help in such tangible ways.
Yes.
I love that. So the other thing we talked about was just the uncertainty of that work with the new administration in place. How can we be praying for you and for World Relief and for those that you serve?
Well, I think that there's praying is something that we always do. But at this time, at this moment, we just need some extra prayers so that the new administration does not remove a lot of the programs that we currently have, so we can continue to help a lot more people, people that are hardworking, that have struggled within this country to just become a better person and become legal.
So prayers. And a lot of funding that World Relief receives is from governmental funding, correct?
Correct.
So anyone interested in learning more about World Relief can also look them up and may consider becoming supporters if they believe in the work that you're doing.
Yes, definitely.
Well, Ali, it's been so great to talk to you today. Is there any part of your story or anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up our time together?
I'm just blessed to still be a part of fellowship housing. I'm still looking for ways to be part of fellowship housing, even though I'm a graduate and not in the program. But it's just touched my heart, my life in so many ways that I still I want to continue to stay there, and no matter what little piece you guys give me.
I love that. There's nothing we find more rewarding than when graduates stick around, when they want to still be a part of fellowship housing. And so we'll have to make sure we keep looking for spaces and places for that to take place. Ali, thank you so much for sharing your story today. So excited. I wish we had a picture with Camila in it as well. But thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for tuning into the Holding Hope podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, would you consider becoming a part of this community that enjoys elevating the stories of incredible single moms? You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Or if you know a single mom, maybe she is a family member, a neighbor, or maybe she's an acquaintance at church or school, would you reach out to her? You may be the only lifeline that's reaching out with hope. Would you introduce her to fellowship housing? And finally, if you'd like to learn more about fellowship housing, you can find us at fhcmoms.org, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Thank you again for joining us and have a great day.